Okay, so a couple of students asked me to go through this problem. It's question 9 from page 11, where you're told that a quadratic x squared minus ax plus 2 is a factor of a cubic x cubed minus x squared plus 5ax minus b. And you're tasked with expressing a in terms of b and then finding the value of a. Given that this quadratic x squared is a factor of this cubic, the way I'm going to go about this is I'm going to divide in this quadratic into this cubic. Now, of course, I'm going to have to be very careful with my algebra here because obviously I don't have all of the coefficients. And so when I'm subtracting, I'm going to be subtracting a's and b's from one another, and I'm going to have to be careful with that. So I'm going to sort of take my time and make sure that I'm getting all my minuses, etc. I'm not dropping minuses because all of that's going to be very important in order to get the right result. Okay, but to start off, we ask ourselves in the normal way, what do we multiply x squared by to get x cubed? And of course the answer here is x. So x times x squared, that's x cubed. X times negative ax is negative ax squared. And then x times 2 is 2x. And now I subtract, and of course I get here 0. I have negative x squared minus negative ax squared, so that does a double negative there. So I have negative x squared plus ax squared. And then I have 5ax minus 2x, so that's 5ax minus 2x. And before I bring down my next term, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out my x squareds out of these two and my x's out of these two, just so that I know exactly what my coefficient on my x squared term is and my coefficient on my x term is. So let me just do that here. I have x squared. If I factor out x squared out of negative x squared, I have negative 1. And if I factor out x squared out of ax squared, I have a. So I'm left with a minus 1. I'm going to write it that way. A minus 1 x squared plus, factoring out of here, I have two terms, 5a and minus 2. So I factor out x out of 5ax, I'm left with 5a. If I factor out x out of minus 2x, I'm left with just minus 2. And there we go. Those are my coefficients on my x squared term. It's a minus 1, and my coefficient on my x term, which is 5a minus 2. I'm now going to bring down my next term, bring it down here. That's minus b. It's also my last term. And I'm going to do this again. What do I multiply x squared by to get minus a minus 1 x squared? Well, of course, it must be a minus 1. So it's a minus 1. Perhaps I'll put these in parentheses just to make it clear. A minus 1 times x squared is a minus 1 x squared. And here now I have to be pretty careful. I have a minus 1 times minus ax. Well, it's a minus times a positive, so I know that that's minus. And I have a on a minus 1. So I have a on a minus 1. I'll distribute that in a minute. X. And then finally, I have a minus 1 times 2. Well, that's just 2 on a minus 1. That would be 2a minus 2. So that's plus 2a minus 2. So positive times positive, which is positive, so 2a minus 2. And now I subtract again. Subtracting, I will get a minus 1 x squared minus a minus 1 x squared is, of course, 0. So I'll just put that over there. It's 0. I want to make sure I have enough room here. So that's 0. 5a minus 2. I'm looking at the x terms now. 5a minus 2x minus negative a on a minus 1x. So there's a double negative there, so that's going to give me positive. So I have 5a minus 2. I'm going to put it over here. 5a minus 2. This is my x term. Parentheses x. Minus negative a, so that's plus a on a minus 1 x. I'll distribute that in just a moment. And then finally, my last term is negative b minus 2a minus 2. So just be careful again. That's negative b minus 2a is negative 2a. And then minus negative 2 is plus 2. Many students would miss that double negative there. They would write minus 2a minus 2. It's minus 2a plus 2. Okay, so I will gather up my like terms. I have to do some distributing. So bringing it down, I have 5a minus 2 x, just leave that there for a moment, plus, distributing my a into my a minus 1, I have a squared minus a times x, and then I have minus b minus 2a plus 2. Gathering up, I have an x term here and an x term here, so these can be combined. For combining these, I have 5a minus 2 plus a squared minus a x, right? I'm essentially factoring out the x out of both of those two terms, and then I have minus b minus 2a plus 2. I'm almost done. I just noticed that I have an a term here and an a term here, so I have 5a minus a, those can be combined, those are like terms. And so I have a squared, 5a minus a is 4a minus 2 on x, then I have minus b minus 2a plus 2, and that's it. That is my remainder. I was told that x squared minus ax plus 2 is a factor, so I know that this remainder is 0. This is my remainder. This must be equal to 0, and this must be equal to 0. That's the result of knowing that it's a factor. That's what it means, right? So that's equal to 0, and that's equal to 0. So I'm able to form two equations. Essentially, I can now say that a squared plus 4a minus 2 must be equal to 0. I must have a 0x term. And also that minus b minus 2a plus 2, that must be equal to 0. That must also be 0. Okay, so I have two equations, and I can sort of go about solving. I notice on this one here, I'm in a only, so potentially I could solve this for a, and here I'm in a and b. So what I'm going to do is I will rearrange this equation, because I remember that I'm tasked with expressing a in terms of b. So to express a in terms of b, I'll go to this second equation right here, and I will rewrite this as, 2a is equal to adding 2a to both sides, 2 minus b, adding 2a to both sides, and then I'll just divide both sides by 2 to get a by itself. A is equal to 2 divided by 2 is 1, minus b divided by 2 is b over 2. And that is one of my solutions. That is one of my solutions. That's part one of the problem complete, right? So that's part one of the problem complete. That's a in terms of b. To solve the second part, I look at this other equation, a squared plus 4a minus 2, and I have a quadratic trinomial, so to solve these, I would first try to factorize. I think I can see that I'm not going to be able to factorize. I'm not going to be able to find factors of -2 that are going to sum to 4, so I'm going to have to use my quadratic formula. That's no big deal. Minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This a here, this a, this a here, this is the coefficient on the squared term. That's not this a, right? It's not the same. It's the coefficient on my squared term. The coefficient on my squared term, right? So this is a here. This is my squared term, and the coefficient is 1. I have 1a squared, so my coefficient is 1. My b is the coefficient on my linear term, if you like, just my a term, so that's 4. And then finally, c is the constant at the end, that's a -2. And so just plugging these into minus b, I get, line here, I get minus b, which is minus 4, plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4ac is 4 times 1 times -2, and that all divided by 2a, which is 2 times 1, minus 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared is 16. I have a double negative here, minus 4 times minus 2, so that's plus 4 times 1 times 2 is 8, all over 2 times 1 is 2. 16 plus 8, so I have minus 4 plus or minus the square root of 24, all over 2. Does the square root of 24 simplify? Yes, it does. It simplifies. Put it over here. The square root of 24 is the square root. Does 24 have any factors that are perfect squares? Yeah, 4, right? So this simplifies as the square root of 4 times the square root of 6, and the square root of 4 is 2, so that's 2 root 6. Strictly speaking, plus or minus, of course, 2 root 6, but I already have a plus or minus in my formula, so I have minus 4 plus or minus 2 root 6, 2 root 6, all over 2, and that even simplifies further because I can divide above and below by that 2. Minus 4 divided by 2 is minus 2, plus or minus 2 root 6 divided by 2 is 1 root 6, so just root 6. And those are my answers. That's my value for A. That is my value here. That is the solutions. Those are the solutions to this equation right here. These are the values of A that make the statement true. Those are the solutions. So A equals minus 2 plus or minus root 6. So two solutions, minus 2 plus root 6, and minus 2 minus root 6. That is the part 2 of the problem complete.